Hi everyone, I'm Sweet Melba. Thanks for joining me for Sunday on the Porch. Well, I've recently made a decision. I've chosen my retirement date. I've mentioned in some of my other videos that I was going to retire this year, 2026, but I hadn't yet picked that date. Had different things going on and whatnot, but I've made that decision now. And sometimes decisions are harder than others, right? And this was kind of one of those for me. But I think things are much different on the other side. Once you've made the decision, things change. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Most of us have been thinking about our retirement for a long time, years, maybe decades. But it's something that is just kind of always there. You're thinking about that, right? In some fashion or another. And you plan for it. You have to consider the financial. You got to plan for the financial. You have different meetings with advisors, and you're looking at budgets, and so it's something that goes on for a while. You're watching those retirement funds, right? Seeing what's happening. And again, it's just something that is kind of always there. And then you're always thinking too about, wow, what would it be like when I retire? What will I want to do? What kind of activities would I do? Where would I travel to? And again, it's something that you think about pretty regularly, something you're working towards, something you're hoping to achieve. And for a lot of us, sooner rather than later. So again, it's something we think about quite a lot. But retirement is something right off in the distance. It just kind of seems like it just keeps being further out, further out, right? And then one day it's there, and you think, wow, is this really it? Am I really there? And it's a different, frame of reference. And you think about it very differently. And that, wow, all this time and effort I've put into getting to a particular point in my life, am I really there? Am I really ready to um, move in this next direction and pick a date? So it's not an easy decision. Again, we put a lot of time into that planning and you get there, but ultimately you do have to pick a date. And it's not just a date, right? It has some significance. The date that you choose to retire is officially really the end of that working career. You've gotten to that end point. So I started thinking, what is my date going to be? Is it, I thought about, well, do I try to pick a date in the same month of when I started my career 29 years ago? I certainly thought too about, do I take it to the 30 or do I close it off at 29? But 29's it. So the end of almost to the end of my 29th year. And again, I just was thinking, is there a significant date for me that's important? And nothing really came to mind. But for me, it was more practical, I guess you'd say, really, in that, I needed a date in which I felt that I had completed the work that I wanted to do, owning my own business, the work I do for my clients, and that my projects were done, or I was good with the date in terms of where those projects would be and that transitioning over. And I wanted it to be a date that was a date I was going to remember on the calendar. It just wasn't a random date. That there was some importance to that. And so I think I found one that was good for me. But once you pick your retirement date, you're in a new frame of reference. So I remember I was lying in bed. It was probably, early in the morning, maybe 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the morning, something like that. And I was sitting there thinking about, the work that I was doing and where those projects were. And I started to feel like, that project's kind of where it needs to be. And this one will probably be ready about this time. And there was a realization, I guess you'd say, that, I think the work will be done by this date. And I felt good about that. And so I picked that date. And that's going to be June 30th of 2026. And I just, again, felt very comfortable with that date and felt I would be where I wanted to be with my work at that point in time. And without being overly dramatic about it, but once I did that, once I said, okay, June 30th's my date, things felt different. And my thinking changed. I started thinking about other things than that date or the work that I was doing. That shift in thinking for me was the decision had been made. I knew the date. And I was now not trying to make a decision, but I had actually kind of stepped over, right? Stepped over the line. I was actually moving into my next phase. And it just felt very comfortable. And my thinking just really started to change. It felt less pressure. Again, the decision had been made, and I was able to think about other things. And so, some of the things I started thinking differently about that I noticed was that, the projects and activities that I'm working on, that they will be done. And so the work doesn't really seem like work, so to speak. It's wrapping up, it's tying up the loose ends, wrapping it up in a box and handing it off to the next person. And there's a big relief in that, I think, a big, um, you know, awareness that those activities are in a position that they can transition to the next person. And that's a great feeling, I think. And I feel as though I'm being a little more reflective on those projects, the ones I'm just wrapping up or the ones I've done in the past and over the years. They all feel like, things that you're looking back on with appreciation for the opportunities that I had, that, lessons learned and good works done in the community with the type of work that I do, and feeling good about those. And feeling good in the sense that you, the time and effort that you put into that over the years had meaning, and it was beneficial. And it's things I look back on, again, with appreciation and um, a good feeling that it was important work. And I'm glad that I was involved with that. And for me, as I transition away over the next 90 days with my work and with my clients, I notice that I'm kind of already, and I think it'll probably be more so going forward here in the next uh, 3 months, but the opportunity for me to share my insights and my experiences with those that will be carrying on the work, and imparting as much as I can about, again, lessons learned, suggestions, but at the same time feeling as though those aren't my project, those aren't going to be my projects anymore. And it's really up to those that are there and are transitioning over that work, that this is their this is their work. Not that it wasn't before, but it's really theirs now, right? And I'm really appreciating that. And being encouraging to them, you know what you're doing. It's going to be great to see what you come up with and how you do these things, and just being more supportive in that sense because it's now their work. It's not going to be my work anymore. And that mentoring component, which I've always enjoyed and appreciated, um, it's a really good feeling to be there. And I'm glad I have the opportunity to do that with those that are going to carry on this important work. And I have to say, some of the days you come home and you on your way home and you come home, you walk in the door and you're like, it's a sigh of relief, right? Not that my days were overly stressful, but some tasks are a little more challenging than others. But coming home and just kind of, I'm glad I'm home, right? And I don't really feel that right now. And I feel more of, a smile of, you know what, that was a productive day. I passed along some information. I wrapped up this project. I put that file away. So it's more of a smile and less of those sighs at the end of the day. That's been a pleasant experience too. And I hope that continues over the next 90 days. What I'm really coming to appreciate is kind of something I knew, but until you make the decision, right, choose that date. Once I chose the date, it's now I've actually opened the door to what comes next. So, will I have a retirement party? I don't know about that. I thought about it. I'm not sure how I would do that. Mine's a different kind of situation. But I'm thinking about that. But I'm also thinking about going on a vacation. Do I go on a vacation right after I retire? I've thought about that. So, kind of looking at some of those considerations also. I've noticed that some of the things I've been looking at are new activities that I've not done. I actually looked at today. I was looking at one of these painting evening classes that they have. The paint and sips kind of thing. So I've kind of been eyeing those a little bit more. Looking at some more of those community events that might be during the day that, if I'm working, I'm not able to go do. What are those different activities? So I'm noticing that I'm kind of looking those, they kind of catch my attention more. So things I will be doing because I have more free time to do it. And also, I mentioned about, that passing on and whatnot. And mentoring has always been important to me. There were mentors in my career that were really important for me. And I hope to be able to continue to do that. So I have really made an effort to let those that I'm wrapping my work up with know that I'm still there to ask a question for a quick phone call or a text or something like that. That, if they get in a bind, give me a ring. I'm glad to answer some questions. So that's important to me. And I want them to feel comfortable in doing that because I don't want them to feel like, come that retirement date, don't call me anymore. Right. But that's important. And I think helping that next generation, those new to the profession or looking to branch out and take on more responsibility, that even though we're retired, I think those leadership opportunities are still there. And being able to be supportive and encouraging, meeting up with them for lunch on occasion, things of that nature. I'm looking forward to that too. And that's part of what comes next for me. That's important. So I'm looking forward to those opportunities as well, and continuing to support those that continue to do the important work in our community. But I think one of the big uh, awarenesses I've had is rather than thinking about what I'm going to be doing for somebody else, what work I'm going to be doing for somebody else, it's more about what am I going to be doing for myself? And that may be helping others, right? In terms of the mentoring I just mentioned. But, it's really more focusing on what I want to be doing and activities for me and my husband, activities that I can do with my parents, with other family members. And so it's nice to have that shift in thinking of rather than doing necessarily work for somebody else, spending more time thinking about what you're going to be doing for your own well-being as well. Well, for next 90 days, I'm really going to try and pay more attention to this transition, specifically about getting to that retirement date on June 30th. How are things going? What are the different things that I'm thinking about? What are some of the challenges that will probably pop up? I would imagine it's not going to be necessarily just all smooth sailing, but certain things may come up. And I think this is one of those areas that you don't really hear a lot about. You hear a lot about, the financial and what you're doing once you retire, but that transition period, that's important. I think transitions in different aspects of our life are always important. So that's really what I'm going to be focusing on over the next 90 days. So if you're at this stage, maybe pre-retirement and you're thinking about retirement, or you've got your date and you're working towards that, or even if you're in retirement already, this might be a lot of reflection that you remember, or maybe you could share some of your insights. So I hope you'll join me if you want to go along the 90-day journey with me, and just reflecting on what this feels like, to be at this point in my life and looking at retiring in 30 days, or excuse me, 90 days, sooner than I think, but in 90 days. So I think it's going to be insightful. Like I say, I'm hoping to pay more attention. So bringing up some of these ideas and, like I say, things that you don't necessarily hear about other people talking about. So I'm looking forward to sharing that. And I look forward to hopefully more of you joining me and sharing some of your experiences and some of your thoughts in this type of transition phase. So 90 days. Let's see what happens over the next 90 days. Thanks for joining me. I'm Sweet Melba. I'll see you next Sunday for Sunday on the Porch. All right. Bye bye.